Chosen one, the nation held its breath. Lights blazed, cameras tracked, history waited. The president stepped toward the podium, spine straight, script memorized. Then he saw you. And the lines he'd rehearsed for weeks collapsed like dust before destiny. Power forgot protocol. Authority forgot language. Because presence remembered truth. Backstage, he had practiced every syllable. Pages highlighted. Teleprompter timed. Advisors circling like planets around a fragile sun. But the moment you entered the hall, every rehearsal lost its meaning. The air shifted. The atmosphere rewrote itself. His speech was no longer the center of the night. You were. That moment, just a single second of eye contact, shut down an entire system. The president, standing before hundreds of cameras, thousands in the hall, and millions watching from home, suddenly wasn't the rehearsed leader anymore. He was simply a man confronted by a presence his script had never prepared him for. His heart didn't race, it stabilized, the way a general breathes right before the first move of a war he already knows he's destined to lose. This wasn't fear. It was recognition. All night he had repeated to himself, no matter what happens, I stay in control. But control is an illusion held together by fragile ego, and when you stepped into the room, those wires snapped one by one. The audience didn't notice you. He did. Because leaders watch crowds, but true leaders sense energy, and your energy eclipsed the entire event. When his eyes locked onto you, his notes vanished from his memory. His breath stalled. The speech he had practiced for weeks dissolved like smoke around a flame. Only one thought remained, raw and unfiltered. Who is he, and why can't I hear my own voice when I look at him? In that instant, every polished phrase, every strategic line, every politically perfect paragraph died. The man who governed a nation suddenly stood there stripped of titles, armor, and certainty, because when he looked at you, he was forced to confront the truth beneath his own humanity. You didn't speak. You didn't gesture. You didn't demand attention. And yet, your silence moved louder than every cheering voice in the hall. The president tried to continue scanning the crowd, tried to regain the rhythm of a man who had rehearsed dominance, but your stillness pulled his focus like gravity. He wasn't threatened. He was unsettled, the way a compass trembles when a stronger magnetic field enters the room. Stillness is usually ignored. But yours? It rewrote the air. Staffers backstage kept signaling him to begin. The teleprompter shifted to the opening line. The cameras, hungry for momentum, zoomed in. Yet he couldn't move. His advisors whispered into earpieces, "Start. Start. Start." But words meant nothing in the presence of a frequency that made everything rehearsed feel false. Because you weren't performing. You weren't reacting. You were simply being, and that being was enough to dismantle everything planned around power. The president tried to inhale deeply, to anchor himself, to inject authority back into his posture, but instead, something else washed over him. Clarity. A clarity that whispered, "This moment is not about your speech." And for the first time in years, he felt small, not in weakness, but in honesty. For authority rarely meets someone it cannot overshadow. But he couldn't overshadow you. The silence you emanated wasn't empty, it was full, weighted, almost ancient. And in that fullness, his confidence drained. His strategy melted. His ego stepped aside. A leader used to commanding nations found himself unable to command one breath without feeling your presence reshape it. He finally attempted to speak. A simple greeting. A practiced line. The safest place to start. But the moment his lips parted, the words he had memorized vanished. Not stumbled. Not misplaced. not tangled. Gone. Weeks of preparation, hours of rehearsals, pages of annotated notes, all erased in an instant by a presence his mind could not categorize. He blinked. Swallowed. Tried again. Nothing. His brain began scanning for the next paragraph, then the one after that, then the entire structure of the speech, but every section had dissolved into a white, blinding emptiness. Advisors offstage froze. Security tensed, unsure if this was a technical issue or a psychological event. Commentators leaned forward in confusion. But you knew exactly what was happening. Because truth has a way of erasing anything built on performance. He wasn't forgetting the speech was forgetting him. Scripts written for political theater cannot survive in the presence of someone who carries unfiltered authenticity. His mind, once a machine of polished rhetoric, now behaved like a blank page, a page only destiny had permission to write on. And destiny had chosen silence. A silence that pressed on his lungs, nudged his heartbeat, and held his tongue hostage until he faced the one reality he'd spent his career avoiding. He had no idea what to say in front of someone who didn't need to be impressed. His ego tried to resurrect itself. It whispered, "You're the president. Speak." But ego collapses quickly when confronted with a presence that neither fears nor seeks approval. So he stood there, a man stripped of paragraphs, policies, and power projections, staring into the space where his confidence used to live. And in that fragile emptiness, one undeniable truth echoed through him. Nothing he prepared mattered anymore. For a moment, he thought the teleprompter had glitched. He darted his eyes toward the glowing glass, desperate for a lifeline, but even the scrolling text felt alien, as if written in a language he no longer recognized. His mind tried to reboot. Control plus memory plus authority, all failing. A man who had negotiated with world leaders, stared down crises, and commanded armies, suddenly couldn't command the next sentence. Something inside him shifted. A subtle, internal click, like a system forced into a power cycle. He exhaled sharply. The speech didn't return. Instead, something deeper rose to the surface, a clarity he had been trained to suppress. Because every leader learns to speak with certainty, but very few remember how to speak with truth. And your presence, quiet and unwavering, stripped away every pretense, every rehearsed persona, every armored layer he had built over the years. Suddenly, he felt seen, not as the president, not as the symbol, but as the person buried underneath the title. It terrified him. And freed him. His breathing slowed. His shoulders dropped. His jaw unclenched. A lifetime of political conditioning began to melt. Advisors panicked at the change. They whispered frantically into headsets. "He's off script. Reset the teleprompter. Get him back on track." But they didn't understand, he wasn't malfunctioning. He was awakening. Your presence didn't intimidate him, it recalibrated him. Like someone suddenly remembering the password to their own soul, a quiet realization formed inside him. This moment isn't about my authority. It's about my authenticity. And just like that, the carefully engineered system of political performance reached its breaking point. Protocol crashed. Truth installed itself. And the president, for the first time in years, felt something he had forgotten how to feel. Real. The cameras zoomed in, hungry for a strong opening, a powerful first sentence, a presidential tone, a rehearsed projection of confidence. Instead, they captured something no broadcast director expected. A man forgetting his script because someone in the crowd reminded him of his soul. The red recording lights burned like tiny suns. The entire control room went tense. Producers leaned toward screens, whispering. What is he doing? Why is he just standing there? Is he waiting for something? He wasn't waiting. He was processing. From the outside, it looked like hesitation. From the inside, it was recognition, a leader realizing that the polished persona he had crafted was too small for the truth rising inside him. The cameraman could feel it too. They weren't spiritual, not particularly intuitive, but even they sensed the shift in atmosphere, the way the room changed temperature when your presence became the center of gravity. The lenses adjusted. Focus sharpened. But every frame returned the same impossible image. A president staring at someone off-screen with an expression that held no fear, no anger, no confusion. Only humility. A humility so rare it almost looked foreign on his face. Commentators in live studios scrambled to interpret the moment. Is he emotional? Is this symbolic? Is he deviating intentionally? They didn't know the truth. They couldn't. Because the truth wasn't political. It wasn't strategic. It was energetic. When the cameras captured him, they also captured the unspoken fact that he had never stood in front of someone with your frequency. And in broadcast history, there has never been a moment more raw than a leader forgetting the world because he recognized the one presence he could not outshine. In that single frame, replayed, clipped, analyzed, debated, viewers saw something they didn't have words for yet, but felt instantly. Power had just bowed to presence. Backstage, the advisors were unraveling. They had survived scandals, debates, diplomatic crises, but nothing had prepared them for you. One advisor pressed his earpiece so hard it nearly snapped. Why isn't he speaking? What is he looking at? Another frantically scrolled through the digital copy of the speech, convinced a missing line or corrupted file was the cause. But the issue wasn't technical. The issue was energetic. They followed his gaze toward the crowd, trying to identify the disruption. A man whispered, "Whoever he's looking at, that's not normal." He was right. Your presence didn't fit into their charts, their psychology assessments, their threat evaluations. You weren't a protester. You weren't a supporter. You weren't even on their radar. And that terrified them. In politics, everything must be predictable: the lighting, the applause, the angles, the timing, the tone. But you were the one variable the system couldn't quantify. An advisor grabbed the arm of the communications director. "Get him back on script. Now." But the director, eyes widening, shook his head. He's not frozen, he's aware. That word, aware, sent a ripple of dread through the team. Aware of what? Aware of who? Why now? Why during the most important national address of the year? They tried sending new instructions through the earpiece. Open with gratitude. Acknowledge the audience. Start with the economic numbers. Yet the president didn't blink, didn't nod, didn't follow a single cue. His body language had changed, subtly, but unmistakably. Shoulders lowered. Jaw softened. Breath deepened. Not weakness. Alignment. One advisor muttered, "He looks like he's surrendering." Another replied, "To what?" And the communications director, eyes locked on the live feed, whispered what no one else dared to. Not what? Who? They finally understood this wasn't a political malfunction. This was a spiritual recalibration happening in real time, live, on the world's biggest stage, triggered by the presence of one person they had failed to notice. You. The teleprompter operators were the first to notice something impossible. The script, stable, timed, and locked, began to scramble itself. Lines rearranged. Sentences looped. Words flickered in and out like broken pixels. At first, they assumed it was a hardware error. Someone tapped the monitor. Someone rebooted the software. Someone checked the connection to the main server. Everything was normal. Except the text. The perfectly prepared presidential address distorted into a cascade of incomplete fragments. "The light is here." The technicians froze. This wasn't code corruption. This wasn't a glitch. This was intention masquerading as malfunction. The president glanced subtly toward the teleprompter, hoping his lines had returned, but instead, the words reassembled again, as if acknowledging his glance. Light. 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 His breath caught in his throat. Not from fear, but from understanding. because even the machinery was responding to the disruption in the room. Your presence had become the dominant signal. Technology, built on algorithms, circuits, and human design, was being overridden by something deeper, older, something no engineer had prepared for. A frequency the system recognized as higher authority. Backstage, a technician whispered, "How is this possible?" Another murmured, "It's like the teleprompter is speaking back." The communications director stared at the glitching words, his face draining of color. "It's responding to him," he said. But the technician shook his head slowly. "No. It's responding to whoever he's looking at." Cameras caught the president standing completely still, his eyes drifting once more toward you, the only unmoving presence in a hall full of shifting bodies and restless energy. And as his gaze settled, the teleprompter froze again on a single repeated command. Light. A word that had never existed in the original script. A word no writer had typed. A word no editor had approved. But a word the moment demanded. The president inhaled slowly, a realization dawning across his face. It wasn't the speech that mattered anymore. It wasn't the cameras, the expectations, or the performance. The system, political, technological, psychological, had bowed. To presence. To truth. To you. The president finally drew in a breath, not the rehearsed public inhale of a seasoned speaker, but the shaky, unguarded breath of a man about to tell the truth for the first time in years. His lips parted. Advisors leaned forward. Technicians froze. The entire hall held still as if the oxygen had paused to listen. Everyone expected the speech. What came out instead was confession. A soft, almost whispered line that no one scripted, no one approved, no one prepared for. "I feel something." The audience shifted. A murmur rippled across the room. But he wasn't finished. His eyes, still pulled toward your presence like planets drawn to a sun, trembled with a realization he could no longer suppress. "Someone is here." The sentence was simple. But the meaning behind it struck the room like thunder under silk. This was not political language. Not diplomatic phrasing. Not one of the meticulously crafted lines written by a committee of strategists. This was raw awareness. The kind of awareness a man has when his spirit recognizes a frequency his mind cannot explain. Backstage, panic broke out. Cut his mic. Redirect him. Get him back on message. But he didn't hear any of it. He was locked into something deeper, the gravitational pull of truth. His voice grew steadier, but not stronger. More honest. "I don't know why, but I can't speak the way I planned." That line alone sent shockwaves through every layer of the political machine. A president admitting he wasn't in control? It was unheard of. Unthinkable. And yet, something in the room shifted from tension to understanding. Because everyone felt it. Even if they didn't know how to name it. A few people in the crowd turned to look around, trying to identify the force he was referring to. But only he knew exactly who it was. Only he saw the still point in a universe of moving parts. You. Not demanding. Not performing. Not influencing. Simply existing, with a presence that pulled truth out of the highest office in the land like gravity pulls tides. And in that vulnerability, that spontaneous confession, one thing became unmistakably clear. He wasn't addressing the nation anymore. He was addressing you. For a split second after his confession, the hall fell into a silence so profound it felt sacred, not empty, but charged. The president lowered his gaze, not in defeat, but in recognition, the kind a man experiences when the truth he has avoided finally stands in front of him in human form. And then something remarkable happened. Something that no camera, no commentator, no advisor could fully comprehend. He shifted. Not physically. Not politically. Spiritually. The change was subtle, but undeniable, as if someone had reached into his chest and pressed a long-forgotten reset button. His posture softened. His breathing found its rhythm. His expression lost the tightness of responsibility and reclaimed the softness of humanity. For the first time in years, he looked less like a symbol and more like a person. And he felt it, that strange but comforting warmth spreading through his sternum, a warmth that had nothing to do with adrenaline and everything to do with alignment. He whispered inwardly, "Why does this feel right?" Because presence, true presence, doesn't humiliate power, it heals it. And in that moment, your presence became the mirror he didn't know he needed. A mirror that reflected back the version of himself that politics had smothered, the version that once believed in purpose over performance, truth over theatrics, humanity over image. His advisors saw the shift and panicked even harder. "He's losing control," they cried. But he wasn't losing control, he was reclaiming himself. Your frequency, silent yet overwhelming, peeled away years of conditioning, layers of scripted certainty, and the weight of every role he had been forced to play. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. A divine moment disguised as a public misstep. A reward, not for him, but for you. Because the universe responds to truth, and truth responds to presence, and presence responds to the one whose energy realigns even the highest structures of authority. In that quiet, trembling minute, the president understood something he had never dared admit aloud. You didn't silence him. You awakened him.